Was life on Earth ever like a fairy tale? Perhaps if you go back 100 million years ago, in the Cretaceous period. How else to call the mysterious impenetrable thickets of lush forests and ferns taller than a person? And most importantly, the absolutely unimaginable monsters that roamed these thickets. We know that dinosaurs lived there, and at the end of the Cretaceous period, the ancient reptiles reached their highest peak. For example, scientists from the University of California counted 2.5 billion tyrannosaurs over the entire period of their existence. These dinosaurs are considered the most aggressive and successful predators of all time. But there were also dinosaurs with horns, hooves, duck beaks, huge crests on their heads, and bizarre bone collars on their necks, not to mention thousands of teeth. Some of them may even have emitted flames from their nostrils like fire-breathing dragons. However, this scientific hypothesis hasn't yet been proven. While scientists have no doubts about the monstrous size of some reptiles, in China's northern province of Hebei, a group of paleontologists has unearthed about 4,300 dinosaur footprints. There were leg prints that reached several meters. This is a bit less than a Ford Focus car. According to scientists, the giants were over 15 meters, 50 feet long, just like a railroad car. But there's so much more that dinosaurs could surprise us with. Which of them were similar to chimeras that seemed to be several creatures at the same time? Why did one of the dinosaurs need horrendous meter-long claws like Freddy Krueger? And which of the flying reptiles had a wingspan that reached to the height of a 2-story building? We invite you to immerse yourself in the incredible ancient world of the Cretaceous period and get to know who inhabited the Earth during the last brightest era of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous. The second stage of the Cretaceous began 101.5 million years ago and ended 66 million years ago. At that time, dinosaurs could no longer roam freely around the planet. Inside the Earth, tectonic plates continued to move, changing the shape of the land on the surface. America gradually moved westward, causing the Atlantic Ocean to expand. The western inland sea route divided North America into eastern and western parts. India kept heading north towards Asia. In the southern hemisphere, Australia and Antarctica were probably still connected and began to move away from Africa and South America. Europe was a chain of islands. By the very end of the period, the continents started to resemble their modern shape. Africa and South America have acquired their usual outlines, but India hadn't yet collided with Asia, and Australia was still part of Antarctica. On all the continents in the late Cretaceous, the climate was much warmer than today, although it gradually became slightly colder. By the end of the Cretaceous, the tropics persisted in the equatorial regions, and in the north the seasons began to change. The summers were quite hot, and in winter the temperature significantly dropped. The vegetation on all continents was more or less the same. The forests mainly consisted of cycads and ginkgos. Conifer trees were more common closer to the poles. At that time, flowering plants had already emerged, and by the end of the Cretaceous period, they'd become quite diverse. In temperate regions, one could see a lot of redwoods and willows, and even magnolias and roses decorated the planet with their beautiful flowers, where dinosaurs could take selfies. But of course, animals couldn't do it. On all continents of the planet, there were thickets of sassafras. These were deciduous trees and shrubs from the laurel family, which are widespread even today. It can be assumed that these plants could survive billions of years of evolution due to their high vitality. Sassafras could break even from under stones and grow in such conditions for years. Many insects fluttered and crawled in the forests and on the banks of water bodies. And there were a lot of creatures that would really surprise modern people. Here, for example, is Manipulator modificaputus. Nowadays, some devices are called that. And if we talk about Cretaceous, this is the name of the extinct predatory cockroach. This is a nanomonster of the Cretaceous period with an elongated neck and a freely rotating head. The insect's body was only 4.5 millimeters, 0.18 inches long, and 2 millimeters, 0.079 inches wide. The cockroach also had unusually long legs. According to scientists, this indicates its predatory lifestyle. So it was easier for a tiny predator to chase prey, for example, microscopic midges. The Burma pogon flies were probably even more cruel hunters. They belong to a species that scientists call killer flies. These are powerful, bristly flies with a short, thick proboscis covering a sharp, sucking larynx and pharynx. The term killer flies reflects the insect's aggressive habits. They tirelessly waited for the prey in an ambush and then quickly caught it right on the fly. New creatures also appeared in the warm seas and lakes of the late Cretaceous. Stingrays and modern sharks populated the sea, as well as many bony fish species. At the bottom, sea urchins and starfish thrived, and coral reefs continued to grow. Ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs gave way to huge snake-like mosasaurs, some of them real giants and well over 17 meters, 56 feet long. Mosasaurus preferred to live in the open ocean and deep coastal waters. Sometimes they caught small fish and, more often, hunted very large and well-protected prey. They preferred to eat marine reptiles for lunch, especially turtles and plesiosaurs. These dinosaurs even devoured their own kind, resorting to cannibalism. Scientists believe that at a young age, Mosasaurus could attack animals larger than their size. Mosasaurus' teeth were well adapted for cutting and crushing, and their massive jaw muscles provided tremendous bite force. Mosasaurs dismembered their prey into many relatively small pieces before eating. Most giants couldn't swallow large pieces of prey whole. The sky of the late Cretaceous period was already quite densely populated by small, real birds and their predecessors, Archaeopteryx. But the most populous were winged reptiles, pterosaurs. Some of them were absolutely amazing creatures. The Quetzalcoatlus pterosaur is considered one of the largest known flying animals of all time. Paleontologists have found bones of individuals up to 10 meters, 33 feet tall, but weighing only 70 kilograms, 150 pounds. As huge as airplanes, the creatures had unusually long, stiff necks. They had a crest on their heads, although its exact shape and size are still unknown. The scientists have calculated the wingspan of flying giants. It reached 16 meters, 52 feet. This is higher than a two-story house. But the fantastic properties of the pterosaur don't end there. It perfectly combined the air and land lifestyle. Quetzalcoatlus flew effortlessly using hovering and wing flapping. At the same time, they were quite good at running on the ground on four legs, like modern hooved mammals. This helped the pterosaur to be a successful Cretaceous predator. Using a long, sharp beak, Quetzalcoatlus caught fish and little vertebrates on land or in small streams. Well, it didn't even avoid carrion like a marabou stork. And of course, the dinosaurs dominated on land, big and small, slow and super fast, herbivores and predators. Nodosaurus became the most common among herbivorous giants of the Cretaceous. These four-legged reptiles didn't look much like the huge sauropods of the Jurassic period. They had relatively short limbs compared to the columnar legs of the Jurassic sauropods. They didn't grow to be as high as the megagiants of the Mesozoic era. On average, Nodosaurus were 6 meters, 20 feet long, and weighed 3.5 tons. But this animal was quite well protected. Their body was covered with an impenetrable shell of a dense bone plate layer, so the giants could safely eat young shoots in the forest without fear of predators. Their elongated muzzles with massive jaws, small leaf-shaped teeth, and a horny beak were perfectly adapted for their diet. But other predominantly herbivorous dinosaurs, namely Therizinosaurus, can be called real monsters of the late Cretaceous period. These reptiles were probably 9 to 12 meters long and weighed up to 6 tons. They walked on 2 massive legs, and their forelimbs were very long and reached 3.5 meters. But their terrible claws made them look like Freddy Krueger from the famous horror movie. Although the largest specimens of claws found by paleontologists were incomplete, they were estimated to be almost a meter long. Scientists haven't yet come to consensus as to why the dinosaur needed such equipment. However, it's obvious that it gave the reptile some survival advantages. For example, Therizinosaurus could defend themselves with their terrible claws against larger, more aggressive predators, such as Tyrannosaurus, or fight for territory or a female with the dinosaurs of the same species. It's likely that Therizinosaurus also used their claws to pull branches with the most succulent leaves to their mouth. But they also ate insects and may have torn apart nests of ants and termites. Finally, there's a hypothesis that the claws helped the reptiles to rest in a safe place, hanging from trees like modern sloths. It seems that there were no creatures in the world more terrible than these reptiles with their mega claws. But what would you say about the Hadrosaurus if you got to know it better? These huge animals were up to 25 feet, 7.6 meters long, and weighed 8 tons. Like chimeras, they had wide noses resembling a duck's beak and hooves on their front paws. And on their heads there was a hollow helmet. There is a theory that inside this crest was combustible gas. Like a real dragon, the dinosaur threw it out in danger, somehow igniting it when the gas irritated its nostrils. By the way, the fire could be cold. Many esters of organic and inorganic acids can ignite. This is enough to scare off the enemy. Unfortunately, this hypothesis doesn't have enough evidence. Most likely, the helmet served as an airbag for the dinosaur and allowed it to keep its head underwater while looking for food. Or the dinosaur made sounds of danger, warning relatives by releasing air from the helmet through its nostrils. The Hadrosaurus's skin was covered with small scales, and there were bone growths on the skull. There was a huge number of teeth in its scary mouth. Some animals had about 1,000 teeth. It was the most toothy dinosaur among all the ancient reptiles that ever existed. And yet Hadrosaurus would certainly have seemed almost innocent-looking compared to Triceratops. It would seem their only look could render anyone speechless. These huge reptiles were 8 meters, 26 feet long, and weighed 9 tons. Paleontologists consider the largest skull among land animals to be an amazing find. About 2.4 meters, 8 feet long. It belonged to a Triceratops. So the monster's head was a little less than a third of its entire body. But what made the giant Triceratops head truly scary were 3 horns. A horn protruded menacingly over the animal's nostrils, and one grew over each eye. An even more unusual feature of the Triceratops was a kind of firm bone collar around the neck. The purpose of this growth, as well as the reptile's horns, have long been discussed. Traditionally, they were seen as a defensive weapon against predators. But now it's considered more likely that the horns were used primarily in courtship and to fight relatives. Everything is like that in modern deer, mountain goats, and even rhinoceros beetles. Triceratops' skin was also unique. It was incredibly thick and according to some evidence, was bristled in some species. However, the formidable appearance, thick skin, bone collar, and horns didn't save the Triceratops from the attack of the most aggressive predators of the Cretaceous period. In popular culture, one can often see fights of horned reptiles with tyrannosaurs. Scientists confirm that this might be true. They found a Triceratops skull with teeth marks from a Tyrannosaurus rex on the frontal horn. Furthermore, there were found the heads of these dinosaurs severed from the body, also with traces of T-Rex bites. Although one shouldn't think the giants dominated among the late Cretaceous dinosaurs. Velociraptors were much smaller than tyrannosaurs, but also very dangerous. Velociraptor, meaning swift invader, is a medium-sized dinosaur. The largest adult specimen known to paleontologists is 2.07 meters, or 6.8 feet, long, and weighed up to 15 kilograms, 33 pounds. The jaws of these fast and aggressive predators were equipped with 26 to 28 widely spaced, very sharp teeth on each side. And the front paws were crowned with a large claw that could grow more than 6.5 centimeters, 2.5 inches long. Most likely, it served to tear apart or grab a resistant prey. Mammals of the late Cretaceous, compared to fascinating reptiles of that time, seemed humble-looking and inconspicuous. Basically, these were animals resembling modern mice, both in terms of size and appearance. But there were also absolutely amazing creatures among them. For example, Cronopio with long front teeth. Paleontologists believe this mammal looks like the bizarre saber-toothed squirrel from the Ice Age franchise. Despite the fact that the planet was abundant in food for every taste, all these animals had to fight hard for their place under the Cretaceous sun. They spent their lives in constant pursuit of prey and in bloody fights for food. This is how, perhaps, animals lived in one of the corners of the planet on the shores of a lagoon of a warm, shallow sea. It often rained here, and the shores were probably covered with thickets of tall ferns with long, lush shoots. A little farther, there was a green forest. There must have been a lot of animals there. Most likely, it was impossible to call it a peaceful and friendly neighborhood. Lagoon inhabitants had violent fights all the time. Predators were looking for prey, and they also tried to get something for dinner, but at the same time not to get into someone else's teeth or claws. Perhaps one day a young Hadrosaurus came out to the lagoon to freshen up and catch small aquatic prey. As we know, its head had a growth in the form of a helmet. The dinosaur could swim well if this crest served as an airbag. Most likely, the lagoon water was teeming with fish, like other warm Cretaceous reservoirs. And the Hadrosaurus would probably decide to catch one of them for dinner. But as soon as it entered the water and was getting ready to hunt, something huge could jump out of the depths. Long and saw-sharp teeth would then dig into the Hadrosaurus flesh. Powerful jaws closed, breaking the reptile's bones, and the dead carcass would be dragged under the water. This was probably a Mosasaurus that jumped out of the sea and had a successful hunt. Such prey was well suited for this water reptile. In the second episode of Jurassic Park, it's shown how a giant Mosasaurus destroyed a boat with people. It may well be that the largest individuals could actually do it. But of course, after having a prey as huge as a Hadrosaurus, the Mosasaurus was satiated and didn't go hunting for a long time. The small inhabitants of this corner of the planet were also probably looking for food. Similar to the saber-toothed squirrel Cronopio, was looking for conifer cones and other fallen fruits for food. It was careful not to get into any predator's teeth. And as such, a predator could well have appeared right from the sky. This hungry Quetzalcoatlus soared down to get the little animal for dinner, but it managed to dodge the claws of a flying predator and darted into its burrow. However, in the thickets of ferns, there were definitely many reptiles scurrying around. They perfectly matched the food requirements of the flying dinosaur, and it could easily keep on hunting. In the end, no doubt, it was bound for success, because there were more than enough small living creatures in the Cretaceous forests. However, there lived many large animals too. In the forest, herds of herbivorous dinosaurs probably gathered for lunch. 12-meter Tyrannosaurs could reach very high and gnawed on tender young leaves from the treetops. When food ran out, they moved to other forests. At the same time, the reptiles preferred to be in herds. Such a lifestyle helped them protect their young from numerous Cretaceous predators. Unlike them, lower animals like 6-meter nodosaurs fed in the middle forest tiers. These reptiles also lived in herds, which helped defend off predators. They certainly had strong bone armor, but together they could also whip off the enemy with powerful and hard tails. Tyrannosaurus, which probably lived in that forest, also went hunting. It could take care of its own lunch. For example, catch a small velociraptor. Of course, the T-Rex is an unsurpassed warrior and would easily tear to pieces this reptile the size of a large Christmas turkey. But don't forget that its potential prey ran fast, and like all the inhabitants of the Cretaceous, was constantly on the alert. The velociraptor must have rushed off quickly and disappeared into a thicket, and was difficult for the Tyrannosaurus to chase. However, the Tyrannosaurus would hardly have been left without prey. This predator always had a chance to catch some slower little dinosaur. But what if the T-Rex ran into another huge reptile in its hunting grounds and decided to attack it? For example, it met an 8-meter Triceratops. It would seem that just one look at this terrible 3-horned reptile with a huge collar around its head is enough to scare off the enemy. But that was not the case with the Tyrannosaurus rex. This aggressive, agile dinosaur could well have pounced at the enemy. Apparently, the unsurpassed T-Rex could easily avoid the horns and bite through the enemy's thick skin. Having killed the Triceratops and fed on its flesh, it would have gone to rest deep into the forest for several days, and scavengers like velociraptors and other small dinosaurs may have devoured the remains of the carcass for a long time to come. Therefore, dinosaurs and other animals spent their days fighting on the shores of a picturesque lagoon. Even in the midst of an abundance of food, they had to fight, not for life, but for death. In the end, there were probably no absolute winners among them. All species survived. According to the paleontologist findings, the number of individuals and species diversity of dinosaurs on the planet grew until the end of the Cretaceous period. All these animals, of course, didn't know that their last day would soon come. Then, apocalypse could not have been predicted by even the most advanced modern analyst using a quantum computer. Death came from the sky, and the impact of a single asteroid the size of a mountain destroyed most of the living beings on the planet. But the celestial killer couldn't completely turn the planet into a lifeless desert. Dinosaurs became extinct, but small and inconspicuous mammals waited out the disaster in burrows deep underground. Later, they took advantage of the lack of competition from the huge reptiles and achieved supremacy in the new world of the Cenozoic era. Though that's another story.